I heard Mr. Beast say this in an interview. He's obviously the biggest YouTuber on the platform, hundreds of millions of subscribers. And they asked him what would his advice be to like a new YouTuber or someone who's looking to get into it. And the only thing he tells them, he says, okay, so welcome to the Callum Johnson Show. I'm Callum. Today we're doing it a little bit differently. So there's no guest, it's just me and Tiana, my engineer, the producer. She helps make the show happen every single week and does a brilliant job at it. Tiana, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah. Hey, I'm Tiana.
Yeah, so we're going to do this one a little bit differently. Obviously, it's been a crazy ride. We just passed 100,000 subscribers on the channel, which is so incredible. Especially when I think that I started making episodes 2.5 years ago in my younger sister's bedroom. To be here is surreal to me sometimes. And I think along that journey, I get so many questions about, my experience doing a podcast, growing it, kind of learning the YouTube game, some of my favorite guests, stories that I have from recording these episodes, over 100 at this point. So yeah, we're just gonna get into it, and Tiana's gonna ask me some questions. So let's fire away. Tiana, go for it.
All right. So, if you were teaching someone how to go from 0 to 100K subscribers on YouTube, what would they need to know?
Okay, I love this question. So first, let me start by giving some context. So I started the show about 30 months ago. In the first 21 months of doing the show, I got 30,000 listens total across everything. So every episode that we posted, and that was me posting week after week after week, 30,000 downloads on all of it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, podcast, whatever. In the last 9 months, I've gotten over 5.5 million downloads. We added over 100,000 subscribers. And so it's really been one of those stories of going from like nothing to something. That kind of chart that you see sometimes when content creators are talking about their growth. It's been parabolic. And so I don't say that to brag. I say that more to give context of like where we're at. Um, and so a lot of the times when I give people that context, they want to know how we did it or what changed. What was the thing that made you go from 600 subscribers to after 2 years to getting 100,000 in the last 9 months? Um, and here is my answer to this question. And if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notes. I wanted to give you guys really pinpoint, practical information and not miss any steps. And so to begin, um, I wanted to start with what I call phase one, which is how do you just get your first 1,000 subscribers? And before I actually get into the practical stuff, I think mindset and how you approach it is really important in the beginning. If you're just trying to go from a place of you've never made content, you've never made videos in your life to getting millions of views and tons of subscribers like overnight, you're coming at it from the wrong perspective. I remember there's this I heard Mr. Beast say this in an interview. They asked him, he's obviously the biggest YouTuber on the platform, hundreds of millions of subscribers. And they asked him what would his advice be to like a new YouTuber or someone who's looking to get into it. And the only thing he tells them, he doesn't give them any tactics or anything. He just tells them this. He says, release one episode per week, and every time you release, just improve one thing in that video. That is literally the entire game that you need in the beginning. Because in the beginning, it's like you haven't actually made videos yet. So you need to go into that mindset of like, I'm just trying to improve at the craft and trying to get good at making videos. Um, and so what does that look like? I think in the beginning, it's important to pick a niche. It's important to pick something that you can talk about easily. I often ask people, I'm like, what's the thing that you can talk about for hours, right? Like maybe, I don't know, maybe if you're into gaming, it's like Call of Duty. Like you could go through the maps and the gaming and the history of the game, and you could talk about it for hours easily. It would be effortless to you. Maybe it's sports, maybe it's fashion, it's beauty, whatever the niche is. But it's important to pick something that you care about, that you're knowledgeable about, and it's easy. Producing videos for YouTube week after week after week is a difficult thing to do. There's a lot of weeks where honestly, and I've gone through this, you just don't feel like putting videos out. And so it's incredibly important that the topic is easy. And so in my case, um, I've known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur from when I was like 13, 14 years old. Growing up, I would always watch interviews with like business people, whether that was Mark Cuban, whether that was Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Bob Iger. Like I would just watch entrepreneurs. I'd watch Gary Vee. I was just into it. And so it was a pretty easy decision for me in the beginning of like, I want to interview entrepreneurs who are successful, who have built businesses. And that's what we did. And we did that for the first, we've done that throughout, but I focused on that. I think one of the common questions or like concerns that people have when it comes to picking a niche is they don't want to get like pigeonholed in one area. So they don't want to just talk about business. And for a lot of creatives, it's like we're multifaceted, we're interested in different things. It's like, yeah, I like sports, but I also like fashion and I like traveling. And so why can't I talk about everything? I think unless this is what I would say. This would be my advice. I think it's easier to pick one thing in the beginning and really start to understand that audience, really start to understand the trends and the topics that are working within that niche, really start to understand like what does good packaging look like? What does good thumbnail and title for that niche look like? It's easier when you start with one. Now, there are examples, of course, of people that I'm almost thinking of like an Emma Chamberlain or creators that are so gifted naturally at storytelling and making content and so charismatic that they just get on camera and start talking and it blows up. But that's not the common thing, right? Like for me, that wasn't the common thing. I spent so much time putting these episodes out and agonizing it over it and going back to the drawing board and reviewing it and then improving something and then posting again. I did that for 2 years before things really started to pick up. And even that is quick. I've spoken to people that have been doing it for years and years and years, and it still hasn't picked up. So it takes time, and it's easier when you can just focus on one niche. So that would be the first thing. Choose a niche, make sure it's something that comes easy to you, and then be consistent. Post 1 to 2 times a week, ideally. And every time you post a video, review your video and improve just one thing. And it's important to improve just one thing because it's like, that's when you make real meaningful strides and you can focus on it. And gradually, what you're going to start to see, I remember I had this experience a couple months ago. I went back to one of my videos from 18 months ago. And at the time when I released that video, I thought it was like the bee's knees. Like I thought this was an amazing video, such a great interview. The production was so good. And um, I was watching it back like a couple months ago. I was like, this isn't good. Like honestly, like, and the reason why is that if you are constantly iterating and improving the videos, then over time, your videos should almost be like unrecognizable to you. Like you shouldn't even recognize the person there because you're improving, you're getting gradually better. And it all goes back to this mindset, this having this long-term mindset and perspective where you're constantly looking to improve. And let me just be real, like for people that know me, I am obsessed about this podcast, about the YouTube algorithm, about the genre and the niche that I'm in. I watch other shows of like people that do similar stuff, whether that's Stephen Bartlett, whether that's Chris Williamson, whether it's Lewis Howes, whether it's the Rich Roll podcast, whether it's Tom Bilyeu. Like I can go on and on with the names. And I think that's a big part of the success. Like you have to love it. You have to have that mindset of you constantly want to get better at the craft. Um, so that's the second thing is posting 1 to 2 times a week, ideally. But even if you can't commit to 1 to 2 times a week, just pick a cadence you can do. Can you release a video every 2 weeks without fail? Cool. Stick to that. Do that. It has to be without fail. I think one of the things that's incredibly important in the beginning, and I'm sure that you've heard this, right? Of the friend that you have that's like wanted to start a podcast forever, or they've wanted to do YouTube forever, or they want to do TikTok, and maybe they post a couple videos and then they disappear for 3 months. They're not consistent. And so I tell people in the beginning, it's like, you have to prove to people that you're going to be around. Like, fuck trying to go viral or blow up. It's like, are you going to turn up again next week when you said you would? Like, that's what's important in the beginning, being consistent, like picking a cadence and sticking to it. And then the third thing, so if you can do those first two things, here's what you're going to start to see, right? You're going to be posting weekly, and the weeks are just going to go. I remember 18 months ago, I quit my job to do the podcast full time. Before that, I used to release the podcast as seasons. So I'd record a season and then I'd release all the episodes. Then I'd take like 3 months to record another season. I'd release that. When I left my job, I made the decision that I'm going to release every single week without fail. I do not care what is happening in my life. A podcast is coming out. I could be in hospital. I'm pressing publish from the bed. Like, it's going out. And so we went on this run where essentially for like 56 weeks straight, every single week an episode came out. And so when you have that sort of consistency, that relentless consistency, what you're going to start to see is that one week you post an episode, it gets 60 views. The next week, 70 views. Another week you post another episode, it gets 120 views. The week after that, 40 views. The week after that, one gets 500 views. And so what you're looking for in this period is you're looking for what I call signal. Signal. Essentially, you're looking for outliers. So you're looking for those weeks. And let me give an example so it's really real for you guys. I want you to be able to take this away and implement it. Okay, so let me take you back to 18 months ago. Obviously, I'm putting out episodes every week. And on average, we would get around 100 views. So there'd obviously be some variability in there. Like YouTube even shows you, right? It shows you kind of the ranges that your videos operate in. So I'd be between like 76 and like 112 views. And the numbers would not budge. It was so frustrating to me that every week I would post and I would do that thing where I improve one thing in the video and I put it out and still it'd be like 101 views. And then I remember there was one week where an episode got 500 views. And here's an important thing. I remember when that episode got 500 views, I was so fucking excited that that episode got 500 views. And that's what you have to be like in the beginning, because you're not getting this validation from the external world. Like, you're not getting the adulation and the validation of getting thousands of people watching you, commenting, DMing you, liking the videos, sharing it. So you need to do that. You need to be that cheerleader for yourself. So I got 500 views. Honestly, I felt like the man. I'm like, we are coming. Like, it's only a matter of time. And one of the reasons that we got 500 views on that episode was that we changed up the thumbnail template that we used. One of my editors sent me like a different version of the thumbnail. I ran it and the video suddenly gets 500 views. And so in this period, you want to look for signal. You want to look for signal. You're looking for outliers. And so as soon as I saw that episode got 500 views, I watched it back. And I paid attention to, okay, what was the thumbnail and the title that we chose? What was like the topic? And when I say I paid attention to the thumbnail and title, I paid attention to like, what sort of themes was it around? What was like the vibe of it? What was the facial expression that I used? In the intro, I would like analyze it. I'd be like, okay, how did we do the cuts? What sort of things did we talk about? How long was it? You can really like dive deep into the detail of your content and think through how you can start to improve it. And that's why I say you need to be obsessed. You need to love what you're doing so that it's easy to watch it back and be like, okay, I noticed this thing. Next time we're going to do this. And slowly, what is going to happen is you're going to start to get really fucking good at making these videos. And not just any sorts of videos. These are videos that you uniquely can make. No one else can do it like you. And the reason why is because you're studying all of your own film. You're studying all of your own film and you're taking the best parts of it and implementing it back into the mixture and then posting again. And so if you start to do this and you're doing it correctly, what you will see is that instead of a 500 view video happening once every 4 months, it will happen once a month, then once every 2 weeks, then once a week. And then it's just your new average is established at 700 views, 500 views, whatever it is. And that's going to take you to your first 1,000 subscribers. So that's what I call phase one. Phase two, how do you go from 1,000 to 10,000 subscribers? And so just to rewind for just a second, phase one, I kind of see it as like an experimentation phase. You're trying different things, you're seeing what works. As soon as something works, you're learning from that and you're implementing it back in. Phase two, it's just you're continuing the habits that you have built in phase one. So when you start to hit the like 1,000 subscribers and it feels like you've kind of pushed the rock up the hill and now it's like you're getting momentum, the one thing that you cannot do is stop, is take breaks. I remember like we had the first episode with Tez in November. Most popular video on the channel, even to this point, over 800,000 views. And you have to think at the time before that went viral, we were getting 100 views an episode. And so it's a really great feeling when you've been working at something for so long and then there starts to be a bit of traction, a bit of momentum. And it's so easy to just like be content and comfortable in that. Do not do that. My mindset when I had that first episode with Tez, I was so hungry for it. I'm like, we're going to go again and again and again and again. And so here are some of the tactical things that I did in that period so that the episode we had with Tez, it wasn't a one-off. We started to have other episodes that got hundreds of thousands of views in pretty quick succession. The first thing was I started studying my audience way more. The nice thing of when you're starting to get a few views on your channel, you actually are getting feedback. You can actually see who's watching. You can see the demos. You can see where they're from, how old they are, how long they're watching. And so I spent time in the analytics section. And one of the things that we started to do with every episode is we had what I call a viewer avatar. And essentially what a viewer avatar is I would sit down, we would book a guest, and then I would sit down and I'd be like, who is the person that's meant to watch this? And I wanted it to just be one person. And I would actually write it out. I would write out like a paragraph describing that person. How old are they? Where are they from? What are their insecurities? What are their aspirations? What do they hope to achieve? What is like the biggest obstacle right now? And I would like just go through it. And then when I was thinking about how the episode would go, I would create solely for that human being. Everything we would create would be for that person. And that was huge. Like we get comments on the episodes now where people relate so strongly to the content, or they're like, oh, he asked the perfect questions. And it's because it's not that I asked the perfect questions. It's that I thought very intentionally about who was meant to watch. And then I asked questions from their perspective. And so it feels like it was made for them. And that's what great content is. When you're watching a great interview or a great documentary or whatever it is, it's like you'll have a certain level of relatability with it. It will feel like it was made for you. So that was number one. We started focusing on viewer avatar. Number two was we have like weekly debrief meetings, and we would literally study the best performing episodes that we have, and we would talk about it as a team. What did we do well? What do we think could be improved? And we do it in all facets, right? So one of the things that I talk about a lot with my team when we talk about YouTube is what I call the 3 T's. And this is really a moment where you should key in and like even get out your notebook, write this down. If you want to understand YouTube and how to do well on YouTube, it's all about the 3 T's. Okay, so what are the 3 T's? It is title. Actually, no, let me put it like this. It's topic, title, thumbnail. And the reason why I put it in that order is I kind of consider topic to be the most important. Topic is essentially there's certain themes or video ideas that do really well on YouTube, and it's all niche based, right? So like the things that do well in one niche won't do well in the next. If you listen to Jimmy, Mr. Beast talk, they spend so much time just ideating and brainstorming different ideas, different video ideas. And it's because they're trying to get the topic right. A lot of the best YouTubers, they don't just turn on the camera and start talking. They know what topic they want to base the video around before they start recording. They already have the thumbnail and title in mind, and then they create to fit that. And that's really understanding the algorithm. So that's topic. Thumbnail, it's like, how are you going to get people to click? It's so critical. And let me actually tell you a little behind the scenes story from the show. So I mentioned the first episode that we did with Tez. To give context, that episode came out in November. At that time, we had 600 subscribers. Um, After that episode had been published and was out for like a few weeks, we shot up to 10,000 subscribers. That episode started everything. All the momentum it started was based off that. Funnily enough, people don't know this. When I first posted that episode, it was performing exactly the same as every other episode that we've put out. It was average. It was getting about 100 views. And so, for context, I release episodes every Monday at 8 a.m. And I remember a day had gone past. It's Tuesday night now. And I'm looking at the performance. I'm like in bed. I'm looking at the performance. And I think it's got like 114 views on the episode. And so one of the things that we had started to do around this time is that we had like different thumbnail and title combinations. So rather than just having like one title and one thumbnail that we would post, we had like three different options. And so Tuesday night, I'm sitting in bed and I'm like irritated that it's not really doing that well because I loved the episode. I loved the conversation and I felt like there was so much value that people weren't seeing. And so what I did is we changed from the first option, which was already running, the first thumbnail and title combination that was already running. We changed it to the second one, and I change it. I don't think anything of it. Put my phone on my bedside table. I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning, 8 a.m. I refresh YouTube Studio. That same video, so the exact same piece of content, now has 2,000 views. And I couldn't believe it. At the time, our most popular episode had 8,000 views. So overnight, it goes from 114 to over 2,000 views. That episode then went to get over 800,000 views. The reason I tell you that story is you might be like, oh, what does thumbnail, title even matter, right? It's the same piece of content. No, not on YouTube. Thumbnail and title is everything. It took an episode that was on track to do about 150 views to over 800,000 views. The exact same piece of content, different thumbnail, different title, completely different result, and changed reality. So in that phase of looking to go from 1,000 to over 10,000 subscribers, you need to get obsessive about topic, about title, and about thumbnail. You need to be studying other channels. And this is what we would do. I would study Diary of a CEO, Chris Williamson, Tom Bilyeu, Lewis Howes. I would like look at their most popular videos. I'd look at the titles. I'd look at the topics. I'd look at the thumbnails. And we'd integrate lessons from that into our own videos. The other thing I used to do as well, actually, and I still do it, this is a little secret hack. I would even look at channels which had way smaller followings. But even on these channels that are smaller, every now and then they'll have a video that's like an outlier. It gets like 10x what they usually get. And I'd actually, a little secret, I would use vidIQ. They have this little outlier feature, and it will show you for a video on someone's channel whether it's like an outlier based on their average performance. So say that the channel on average gets 100 views, but then they post one episode that gets 10,000 views. It will circle it as like an outlier. And so I would even look at those videos and I'd be like, okay, what was the topic? What was the title? What was the thumbnail? So I was learning from everyone, and I still am. And I would integrate that into the episodes. Um, so those, to be honest, are the three big things that you need to do to go from, I say 1,000 to 10,000. But to be honest, if you just did that, you could go from 1,000 to over 100,000 just by focusing on those three things, which is a clear idea of your viewer avatar before you record. Number two is studying and becoming obsessive on the three T's, which is topic, title, and thumbnail. And then number three is focusing on your outlier videos from similar channels in your niche and implementing lessons into your own content. Um, in terms of hitting that 100,000 mark and going beyond, I remember, I think Paddy Galloway said this. Paddy Galloway is like a YouTube strategist. He helps huge channels. He's helped Mr. Beast grow his following. And one of the things that he recommended that you should do once you start to get traction, and let me just say this, don't, one of the mistakes that I've made and other people make is they apply lessons or advice from people who are way more advanced. So the things that are going to work for me right now, having 100,000 subscribers, may not necessarily work for you when you're starting with 0 subscribers. Things that are going to work for Stephen Bartlett at 7 million subscribers might not work for me at 100,000 subscribers. So you need to work off where you're at. And so one of the things, so I gave that as context. But if you're at the point where like your channel's rolling and you're building a following, what you want to do is you want to go into YouTube, go on view your channel, go on your videos and change the filter from latest to popular. Take your 10 most popular episodes or videos, put them on like a sheet, take screenshots of the thumbnail and the title so you can see it and you can see all 10, and then just start to write down the features or the traits of those videos. And what you're looking for is you're looking for commonalities, you're looking for patterns. Was there a certain type of guest that tended to do better than another? Was there a certain type of topic that tended to do better? And you just want to study these outliers and think through like, what is performing for me? And that's why it's so good, because it's all your data. And so for us to kind of give the behind the scenes, we have 3 types of guests. So we actually call it type 1, type 2, type 3. We have 3 types of guests that we know work on the channel. And that's all based off this analysis. And even in our team meetings, we'll talk about a guest. They'll be like, oh yeah, that's a type 1 guest. That's a type 2 guest. And we've literally written it out where we know the sorts of packaging that work for them. I'm really giving you guys like the complete source of how we've done what we've done. But yeah, like we really study it and we're constantly learning and iterating and building playbooks for this. So yeah, that's kind of the answer. If you wanted to go from 0 to 100,000 subscribers, and to be honest, I feel like this would take you beyond, but I've got 100,000, so I don't want to say it's going to get you 500,000. But this is the strategy that we employ right now. All right, Tiana, let's go to question 2.
Okay, flex then. But I've got 100,000, so I know nothing about that. Okay.
Humble brag.
Right. The next question that you have here is, what made you start a podcast?
Yeah. You know what's funny? I kind of wish that like it would sound way cooler if I could just get on here and be like, this was always part of my master plan to like have a podcast and a show. To be honest, the podcast started as a complete experiment. So 2.5 years ago, I'm having a call with one of my mentors and my business career coach. At the time, I'm like working, I was working a 9 to 5, I was working in marketing. But like I said, from when I was 14, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so I was always searching for the route out. I was always searching for the thing that I would do and I could be passionate about. whenever you say you want to be an entrepreneur, people always will ask you, like, what's the business? Like, what's the idea? And for the longest time, like, I didn't have an idea. I'd be like, I don't know. Like, we're gonna see what happens. Um, so anyway, I'm on a call with my business coach, and she just mentions it to me. She's like, you should start a podcast. Like, I think it would work with your personality. And shout out Maya by the end, because she had like some prophetic sense, like she knew the future before I did. She was like, you should just do 10 episodes of it, just record it, put it out there, and see what happens. And at the time, I'm 24 years old. I'm like, no one's gonna listen to me. I knew I wanted to interview entrepreneurs, but I'm like, what entrepreneur would even get on my show? Like, I haven't done anything. I work in marketing. I don't even have any episodes. And I was so fearful of putting content out and like putting myself out there. Honestly, I thought it was cringy. Like, I thought it was corny. I'm like, it's so try hard what I'm doing. Um, but I remember she said this to me. She said, just record the 10 episodes. You don't even have to publish them. Just record them and let's see where you are from there. And that's actually a really good lesson when you're getting into content creation. A lot of people overthink it and they're thinking about what they're going to do when they go viral, or like, oh, what's my boss going to say? I'm like, once you get to the point where your boss even knows about your content, you're doing pretty well. So you can figure that out. Like, you can cross that bridge when it comes. In the beginning, it's just important to get started. And so that's what I did. I would essentially, how it would work is every Friday, because that was like the day I had off from work, I would just schedule a bunch of interviews. I would cold email these different entrepreneurs, and I'd like be like, oh, I'm such a big fan of yours. I'd do like a really personalized email. I'd be like, you can have you on my podcast. I'd make it sound like it was a thing. They would come on. We would do remote interviews. I recorded like 10 in like 3 to 4 weeks. And honestly, I remember one Friday, I recorded this episode with this entrepreneur out of Atlanta. His name is Ruben Harris. Um, at the time, because I used to put all of my episodes on Friday, I would do like 3 or 4 recordings in one day. And he was the last recording of the day. I was so freaking tired when I stepped into this recording with him. And I remember like he was kind of intense. He was like very serious, but our energies just like matched. Like, we were both tired. We were both like loved business and loved having like deeper conversations. And so I remember I stepped into the recording and I was dead tired. I left the recording. I was on cloud nine because I loved the conversation. And it was the first time in my professional life where I had done work, but actually got an energy just through the act of doing the work. Not because I knew people were watching it, not because I was getting a paycheck, just the act of doing the craft was enough. And it was the first time, and to be honest, the only time that I've had that. And I remember stepping off of the recording and making a decision in that moment that we were going to be one of the biggest shows in this business and self improvement genre. And I was going to make hundreds, if not thousands, of episodes. And that was the beginning. And here we are. So, yeah, that's it. Question 3, let's get to it.
Let's do it. It is. I have to,
Dramatic pause.
had to get the tense, past tense right. What was the biggest mistake you made on YouTube?
Oh, that's a good question. And there's so many ways that I could take that. Um, okay, I'm going to put it like this because this was really valuable for me. And I think it will be really valuable for people that are listening. I wouldn't even call it a mistake, but one of the biggest learnings that I had was the difference. I call it the difference between being a creator and an artist. So let me explain. When you first start making content, often what is going to happen is you're going to have, in my case, because I had a podcast, you're going to have certain podcasts that you watch or listen to that you admire them. And so when you're creating your content, you're kind of like emulating what they do. You're trying to have like a similar style. I remember for me, right, in the beginning, obviously, Joe Rogan has like the biggest interview show. Like, he has the biggest podcast in the world. And if you've watched any of Rogan's interviews, they're like incredibly unstructured. He just sits down, whatever he's thinking, he just starts talking about it. There's no pre planned questions, there's no strategic element to it. He just sits down and has a conversation. And so if you watch, I would say really like the first 2 years of me doing this, there was no real like strategy or like thinking. I would research the guest, but I would have no questions prepared. I would just kind of go in and like whatever I felt like asking in the moment is what I would ask. And so I call that, well, I would ask the question that I wanted to know the answers to. And so what I call that is being an artist, which is you're essentially creating content that is dope to you. It's like you're creating content based on your own standard of what's great. You're creating for yourself in a way. And it's just about being great at the craft for yourself, which is a beautiful thing and it's a wonderful thing. And to be honest, I'm so grateful that I did it like that in the beginning because I had to get good at the art of conversation. I had to understand how to like make a guest feel comfortable, how to segue between topics, um, how to keep a conversation going and not be in my head. That was all through having this artist frame. But let me tell you a story. I was in London about, was it six? It's getting close to 6 months ago. And I remember I'm in my kitchen, I'm cooking, and I'm listening to an interview. It's with Colin and Samir and Ali Abdal. And it's about an hour and a half. Like it's a good way into the interview. And um Samir says this thing where he goes, there's a difference between being a creator and an artist. And Ali Abdal's like, what do you mean? He's like, an artist makes great content for themselves. A creator makes great content for an audience. So when you're a creator, you have to be so cognizant of the audience. This goes back to what I was saying about the viewer avatar. You have to be so cognizant of who's watching, what's valuable to them, what period of their life are they going through, what questions do they want to know the answers to. When you start operating like a creator, you start doing things like studying the algorithm, like understanding what topics, what thumbnails, what um, titles are trending and doing well at the moment. You start adding these small tactical components in so that now you're making content for an audience. And so I remember having to literally turn the stove off and stop cooking and like replay the section of that video, the creator versus the artist. And I would say since then, we started to implement just these small tweaks into the content that just make it clear that we're making it for a certain person. And it's funny, right? Because I see it in my comments. I see people say, he asked a question that I wanted to ask at that moment. And that's because I started to take on this mindset of being a creator, of making videos for people. And it's kind of like a mix, right? Like it's always a mix between artist and creator. But before I was just an artist, I was just asking what I wanted to know. And now it's like what I want to know, but it's also what I think the audience wants to know. And that's why, in the last 9 months, we've gotten over 5.5 million downloads, which is really cool. And it's had a ton of impact on people, which like is just really cool to me. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. Next.
Okay. What are some stories you have never told from behind the scenes of your pod?
Okay. Um, I actually have a few. I have a few. Okay, so I've never told. Um, I've said it to like my team, but I've never shared this publicly. So I'll give a few. The
Hmm.
first one was with the episode we did with 19 Keys. So it was really cool to get him on. Like, really intelligent guy, incredibly well spoken, great storyteller, great communicator. And so we'd been trying for a little while to get him on. We finally make it happen. I think he's from the Bay. So I think he's based on the other side of the states, but he was in New York. And I remember like basically before every episode, I have like research meetings with my team. And I was joking with them. I was like, I've been watching all of his interviews, and every single one, like a lot of them, he's wearing sunglasses. And it's kind of a thing on the show. Like, I think um we get into like more emotional, like vulnerable moments in the guest's life. And so for me as an interviewer, I always love it when I can like look into like I can see their eyes. Like it helps me kind of read their emotion and where they're at. And he used to always wear these like dark sunglasses. I remember saying to my team, I'm like, if he comes in with the sunglasses, I'm gonna have to ask him to take him off. And so if you know 19 Keys, he's a great guy, and he was great to work with, but he's quite serious. He has quite like a stoic, just like very serious disposition and demeanor. And so I remember he walks in with his manager, and I'm like praying, I'm like, please don't let this brother be wearing the sunglasses. So he walks in, of course, sunglasses on. He's like got the full outfit, sits down, and we're kind of just chatting, but he's also he was posting something on his Instagram, and we're like kind of just chatting. We chat a little bit before the cameras start rolling, and I'm like, God, I'm like, I need to ask him to take the sunglasses off. And you have to keep in mind, like I said, he is serious. So I'm like, part of my brain is like, Callum, just continue with him having the sunglasses on. Like, you don't want to push it too much. But there was something in me. I was like, you got to ask. I'm like, I always tell myself that. I'm like, don't let yourself tell you no. Like, let the person or let the market tell you no, but you're not going to tell yourself no. So I remember I said to him, I was like, Keys, like, would you mind like taking the sunglasses off? Like, we just typically, we don't, guests don't have sunglasses on. And I remember he just looked at me and he slowly said, he said, I'm going to keep the sunglasses on. And then it was like the engineer hit record, episode starts rolling. I'm like, okay, then we're doing this. And I prepare myself for anything. So I'm like, okay, that's what makes him comfortable. We're doing it. And I remember like we get into the conversation, and I'm just feeling it. Like certain points when you record episodes like this, and it's the same in any job, but you just have those days where you're feeling it. Like you're articulate, you're concise, your communication is on point, the questions are on point. And I was just feeling it. And I remember, and he's like vibing off it as well. And we're like building on each other, building on each other's points. And I remember there's a point 10 minutes into the episode, and maybe I'll even get my editor to edit it in. There's a point where I ask him a certain question, and I can see he just smiles a little bit, and he just takes his sunglasses off, and he just lays them on the desk, and he never put them back on. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I got his respect. Like that was the moment, like I got his respect. Um, so that's one. You know what? I'll tell another one. I'll tell another one. My dad's gonna hate me for this. I don't actually know. Was it you that was? I don't know if you were the engineer on this
Mm-hmm.
episode.
In your deck team, yeah.
Um, oh no, you were the engineer on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we recorded an episode with Kat Cole. She's the CEO of Athletic Greens. Uh, yeah. We've been trying to book this episode with her for like 8 months. When I actually started the podcast initially, she was a dream guest. Um, so I'd been trying to get her on for the longest, but she's so busy. It's so hard to get time on her schedule. Anyway, fast forward, we get her on. She's in the studio. Um, and my dad was actually in New York. And for like you guys wouldn't know this, but my dad is like the biggest fan of the show. Like he's watched every episode from when we started 2.5 years ago. He sends me notes about what I can improve or what he liked every week without fail. Like he's so into it. He's the biggest supporter, and I love it. And I'm so grateful for it. But anyway, he was in New York, and so we had spoken about him like being able to see a live like recording, like being able to see it. And like a little thing about my dad, he's like super into gadgets. Like he loves the latest phones, the latest gadgets, and he's like playing around with them and like all of this stuff. Like he just loves it. And so he had just gotten the like Meta Ray-Ban glasses. You know what I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
Tiana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he got they're like Ray-Bans, but they have like cameras and shit built into it.
Yeah, they're
And
getting popping
so,
right now.
yeah. And so um we're recording here and it's actually in this studio. He's sitting on the couch and he's like, and to be honest, like as soon as I tell you, like as soon as we hit play and it's record, I am in the zone. So like anything that's happening outside, it's not any of my concern in my mind. Like I am locked in. And so we get into the episode, we're like near the end, and there's this moment like it's starting to slow down. Just like a thing about podcast is that as you get into the conversation, the guest gets more comfortable, they open up more. You tend to get more of these kind of vulnerable, real moments. And so we're having one of those. And Kat is explaining something from her childhood, and it's like one of these real, just authentic moments. And all of a sudden, it's like music starts blaring. Like there's just like a sound just starts blaring in the studio. And like I say, I'm locked in. So this sound is going, I do not even flinch. I'm like, it's gonna stop. Like, nah, I ain't hear nothing. Like, it's gonna stop. And I can see it's like continuing to go. And now I can see Kat is like gone from looking at me to she's like looking over there. And so I like slightly shift my eyes over and I can see my dad like fiddling around in his pockets and whatever. And he's like apologizing and stuff. And he finally stops it. And so basically what had happened is that his Meta glasses had ran out of battery. And so the Meta glasses can like play sound or something. They can play it like just into your ear if you're wearing them. And because they'd run out of battery, what he was listening to on the glasses was now playing through his phone and it was playing out loud and he was like trying to figure out how to turn it off. And so it's funny because we had this joke with Kat and my dad and everyone in the studio afterwards where it was like, you are never coming to another recording. Um, but yeah, that was another one that I've never really told. But there's so much shit like that. Like unexpected stuff happens all the time. Like when you're recording, like you have to be ready for that. Like the unexpected is gonna happen. Camera doesn't work. Someone busts into the recording. Um,
Yeah,
Tiana needs to cough mid question, whatever the whatever it is. And yeah, you just carry on.
they say in production, everything that can go wrong will.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's a cool story now though.
what guests have inspired you the most?
Yeah, that's a good question. I always get that. Like as soon as like even people that watch the show or people that just find out about the show, they always ask like who my favorite guest is, who's the most inspiring one, which
And
episode
who's
should
giving
they.
you the most off-screen game? I wanna add that.
Oh,
Who's
that's a
giving you
good
the
one.
most off-screen game?
That's a good one actually. That's a good one. There's a few names I could give to that. But yeah, like, I get that question quite a lot. And we've had so many incredible guests. Like I've done over 100 at this point. So like there's been a lot. But one that sticks out and one that's incredibly kind of personal to me is Robbie Lyle, the founder of Arsenal Fan TV. So anyone that knows me, like I grew up in London, I grew up in North London, big Arsenal fan, grew up like 20, 25 minutes away from the stadium, used to go to a lot of games growing up. I remember it vividly when I was like 12, 13 years old, when Arsenal Fan TV like first blew up and like it was getting played everywhere, and the media were reacting to it. And so like I've honestly been a fan of it since then. Like I've been watching their videos since then, and it was pretty surreal and crazy. When I knew that I was going to London to record, I had reached out to Robbie. Funny story, actually. Well, not funny, but just like an interesting little anecdote. He was actually in New York 6 months prior because Arsenal were on their preseason tour in the States. And so he was in New York for a day. And so even then, I was like I'd emailed his team. We had agreed that we were going to do it. I was like trying to figure out how to do it with them. But they were only in New York for a day. So it just didn't work. But I told him, like, when I'm in London, we'll make it happen. And he agreed. And so I remember when finally it happened, we actually recorded at their studios in London, like really close to the Arsenal Stadium, actually. And they have an incredible operation. an incredible operation. They have like a couple of buildings. So they film like Arsenal Fan TV, they film DR Sports, they have like different studios. And really, to be honest, it's like probably the best media operation that I've seen up close and like personal. Like they have a ton of engineers there, they have different studios, they have so many cameras and sets. I remember we record the episode and it's one of my favorite that I've ever recorded. Like I take so much pride in that conversation. And I remember like an hour, 2 hours after we record, they fully edited it and they've sent it to me. And it makes a ton of sense, right? Because they record fan interviews and they'll record these interviews outside of the ground, outside of these football grounds. And then half an hour later, they're on YouTube, fully edited, that title thumbnail. Like they have such a buttoned up operation. And I remember during the conversation, it's like, Robbie revealed things. He even said this to me. He's like, I don't know what it is about you, but I told you things in this conversation that literally only my brother knows it. Like no one knows this about me. Um, and I remember having this moment after we finished the episode and they like kind of give me a tour around the buildings and like the different sets and I take some pictures and everything. And I'm walking home and it's so surreal to me because I've been watching them since I was 12, 13 years old. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, 10, like over 10 years ago when Robbie first started it, he was literally a property surveyor. Like he would go around and he would survey properties in London. And it was funny because at the time, like no one really cared about the opinions of regular fans when it came to like sports analysis or punditry. Um, and he was just like, he would take his camera. Like I think he had a friend, Coogan, who had a camera. They would take the camera to the games and he just started recording people. And he would even, sometimes he would even like take time off of work. Like he would meant to be on the clock, like working, but he was actually doing these videos. And it was just like this hustle, like this grind, this love and this passion for this thing. And over the course of 10, 15 years, he goes from being a property surveyor, doing this on the side, to building a multi-million-dollar media empire, honestly. And like some of the adversity that that man went through from people didn't know this, but like he started out as a reggae artist. Then he started out trying to do his own events, which got shut down by the police, even though they weren't really doing anything wrong. And then he builds this fan channel and like everyone in the media starts going after him. All of the establishment media in the UK were like criticizing them. Oh, they're only in it for the money. They don't actually care about the club and all this stuff. And he's getting death threats. He's getting attacked outside of the ground. And I was like, this guy built this operation, which is incredible. It's like an empire. And now it's the point where like they get so many views and attention, similar to like the establishment media or like radio shows, television shows in the UK. And it's so impressive. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, you can literally just start this. Like you have to start small. Like I started in my younger sister's bedroom. That's where I would do my recordings in the beginning. Robbie started on his friend's like web camera when he could get time off from property surveying. And you can take this really fucking far if you can be consistent, if you can be obsessed, if you can just constantly think about how can you make it a better experience for your end viewer and just have that humility and that work ethic, you can achieve things that you never even dreamed of. And so yeah, I think Robbie was the biggest. He has to be. Yeah, I'd say probably the biggest inspiration. What was the other thing you
I
asked?
asked, shout out to Robbie, but I also asked who gave you the most off-screen game.
Off-screen game.
Because it's one thing to have the interview, and like have all the game, but then like
Yeah,
who was like took you to the side and was just like, "Hey, here's a little tip for you."
yeah. I want to say so much. Like there's so many guests. I'll give that as a disclaimer first. Like there's been so
Mhm,
many guests that have given me so many nuggets.
mhm.
But I tend to just remember the ones that are like more recent because it's like just more top of mind. Um, we did an episode with Sam Parr. He gave me a lot of advice afterwards about like how to approach sponsors and like build the business side of this,
Mm.
which was really valuable. He runs like a huge podcast. They have like a great situation there. They have a great show, My First Million, that he does with Sean Puri. They do an awesome job. Um, that was good. Oh, Tiffany Aliche. I loved my conversation with her. She's such a rock star. Um, she's given me a lot of game. Like we've spoken afterwards. Nikki Saunders. I've gotten we did an episode around how to quit your job and be a viral content creator as an introvert.
That's good.
She's given me a ton of game. Like we've had calls afterwards. She was telling me about Patreon and like different communities and why having a membership and all this stuff is so important.
Coors,
She
like beer,
pardon.
like
What do you say?
like Coors, like beer, Coors Light.
No. Core. I said cause.
That's what it sounded like.
No. Like building like your own community, like building your own membership, like Patreon. She taught me a lot of stuff about that.
Oh, being
Um,
disruptive. Sorry.
Trying to think who else. I hate it in a way because I know I'm missing like so many, and I'll like be on the way home and I'll be like, oh fuck, I did
Yep,
not mention that.
that's how it always is.
I'm trying to think.
There's someone who changed your whole life, and you don't
Yeah,
even.
and I didn't even give them the shout out. They're like, well, fair enough. I guess that went in one ear, out the other.
Did what it's supposed to do.
Kane Calloway, we have a lot of conversations. He was one of the ones like when we first blew up, we had the one with Tez. A couple weeks afterwards, we released an episode with him about how to quit your job and be a content creator. That one got over 100,000 views. He is so knowledgeable, so strategic and like buttoned up and smart when it comes to content. I think he's gonna be huge in the space. Like he's so into it, he's obsessed. You know what's funny? Like when you do this, you can tell the people that are obsessed from the ones that aren't.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it just in their energy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's given me a lot. It's like he doesn't even really try to give me game. He's just giving me his perspective and experience, and like we go back and forth. But I learn a lot from speaking with him. Arlen Hamilton has helped us out a bunch. She has helped us out a lot. She was a great guest, first of all. She's helped a lot in terms of like introducing us to other guests.
Mm-hmm.
She made the episode with Tiffany Aliche happen, which is one of my favorites that we've ever done. She's been awesome. So yeah, I gave kind of a rambling answer, but
No, that was a
there's
good answer.
a lot of people.
That's dope.
All right, what's the
Community. Okay.
You need your own podcast, Tiana.
I'm working on honing in my scrambled brain to something. What guests? Oh.
Just can't read right now. Just struggling with it.
Who are your dream guests?
Dream guest.
How
I have
about that?
so many. So dream guest. Okay, so funny story. Not funny story, but interesting story, I should say. When I started the show about 2.5 years ago, one of the things that my business coach got me to do, she said, come up with a list of dream guests. I think she was like trying to get me like more excited and like thinking about everything that this could be. It's actually a good exercise when you start out, is like kind of envision where it can go. And so I remember I came up with this dream list. I had so many names from like just people I admired, from LeBron James, Barack Obama, Oprah, Lamar Jackson, so many names. But I always tell people this when they ask me about like, who would I love to come on the show? The two people that it would be the most meaningful, who have been so incredibly impactful in my life, and it's like, it's almost a regret in a way that I'll never get to interview them because they've passed away, is number one, Kobe Bryant, and then number two is Nipsey Hussle. Something like a little personal thing about me. You go through so many like ups and downs with this shit, and like producing on a weekly cadence, of trying to build a business, of trying to do it the right way, of trying to do right by your audience. And so every now and then I'll just get a bit disillusioned with it, or just not feel great or just need something, and I will go into YouTube, I will click in that little search bar, and I will type in either Nipsey Hussle wisdom motivation video, or I'll type in Kobe Bryant motivation, and I will just listen to them speak, and they will bring me back to my base level, and I'll go again. So I always say that those would be like the two people that it would honestly be a dream to interview them, and I never will, and I hate that. In terms of people that are alive, there's so many names. I think one of the big ones for me that I just think makes so much sense at the moment is Alex Hormozy. Um, Honestly, I one of the things I said previously is you can tell who's obsessed with what they do and who's just committed and intense and is all in. And he typifies that to me. Like you can just tell that he is all about his business. It is genuine, it is authentic. The stories cannot be replicated because those are his stories and those are the mindsets that got him through those difficult moments. And so I know for me, like, I went through it with building this show to what it is. Like, this is all so real to me. And so I just think we would have like an incredible conversation, one that was like just two people that grinded it out. And obviously, he's done it to an incredible level. And hopefully, one day, like, I'm at that point, but like, I would love to speak with him. I think that we would show him to like a new audience, people that don't traditionally listen to him. And I just think that it would be so inspirational. It'd be so helpful to them to tune in and hear his story and his advice on like how he's built his business from the ground up, from sleeping in gym floors to selling out, um, writing sellout books and making hundreds of millions of dollars. So Alex Hormozy's one. Cody Sanchez is another one that I would love to interview. Rashad or Troy from Earn Your Leisure or Earn Your Leisure. B Simone. It's a bit, you know B Simone, Tiana?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You
I feel
want
like
you want
that's
her on?
yeah. I feel like that's a bit of like people wouldn't expect me to say that, but I think she's so talented.
She's.
Think
I think that would be cool. Like you guys talk about like resiliency, bouncing back after.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she's very genuine. I feel like she's very genuine in her content. Like she doesn't leave certain people like don't want to discuss certain shit,
Mm-hmm.
but she leaves everything on the table, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to get her on.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That is interesting that you say that.
yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there anyone else? Ian Dunlap.
Oh.
Ian, I've been messaging you a lot. We've been talking about it a lot. I want to get someone that does like trading, like trade stocks. It's been kind of that's one topic that we've never done,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason why it's like intentional because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation in that world. There's a lot of people.
There is.
I remember Naval Ravikant has this quote where he says, any get rich quick scheme is someone getting rich quickly off of you. He says there's no such thing as get rich quick scheme. That's someone getting rich off of you.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a lot of that in like the whole day trading, options trading space.
Absolutely.
But I know with him, like he's legit and he's like one of the top people in the space. So like, Ian, let's make that happen.
If they're selling ebooks, better be careful.
I didn't say that. Any of my guests that have ebooks, I didn't say any of that. That's all.
You better do your double search if they selling the ebook. Listen.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one.
What is your next goal now that you have hit 100,000 followers?
Yeah. It's a good question.
What's next?
You know what's funny? So like we a couple weeks ago I was in Florida. I was with my family. It's the first time that I've had vacation or real like time off since starting this 2.5 years ago, since going on this journey 2.5 years ago. It's the first time that I've had like a moment to reflect. And it's funny because it was also the moment where we crossed the 100,000 subscriber goal, and like all of the people that have been like rocking with me and have been watching and supporting and commenting and liking, so grateful to you guys. But you'll know that like every video I'm like, please subscribe to the channel. And so it's been like a huge goal for the channel and for like me personally to hit that 100,000 subscriber mark. And so I remember the evening because we passed 100,000 subscribers and I was asleep. Like when I imagined it, I was like gonna be right there, like
With a
watching this
counter.
shit. But I was like asleep because it was overnight. And so I
Yeah.
remember I went to sleep at like probably like 1 a.m. and I
Jeez.
had like 99,930 subscribers. And so I knew that when I woke up, it would be over 100,000. Um, and so it's funny, like when we did it, and I remember getting messages in the morning when I woke up, like people are like, 1 million next, like you're gonna get 1 million subscribers. And it's really nice some of the messages and the support that people gave. But the funny thing is, you might think my next goal is like 1 million subscribers or whatever, 2 million, 10 million. That's not actually the goal. I think now that we have 100,000, it's crazy to even think that there's 100,000 people that click that button and like wanted to stay up to date with what we're doing. Um, for me, and I said this to my team, I said like, now the goal for us is how do we just give more value to the audience? Like I said it, this is the exact way I said it to my team. I go, now that we've hit 100,000, for those 100,000 people and like the people that subscribe afterwards, I want to be like one of their favorites. Like I want to be in the top 3, then I want to
Mhm.
be in the top 2, and then I want to be the top 1. I want to be like the person that you watch every single week. Um, I want to really build that connection. And so everything that's in my head, everything that's on the roadmap, everything that's in the plans is about like how do we establish a deeper connection with the audience? How do we make content that's even more valuable, that's more impactful? How do we help them get that change in their life that you guys are looking for, whether that's in your bank account, whether that's in um, your health, just like in your mindset, how you live life day to day, your relationships with people that you care about. Whether it's just like a big part of the reason I make the show is like I want people to feel seen. Like I want people to feel like their story is being shared through the guest, and there's someone that has a similar story just like them that was in their exact same position and succeeded and has the happy ending. I want people to feel that. And so everything that we have on the roadmap is about that. And you're going to see like some interesting things. I don't want to say too much because a big thing for me is like, I just like to do it. And then you'll see it when it's done and it's out and it's ready for you guys. But we are working on some stuff. And I'll tease one thing, which is before the end of this year, and maybe it'll be early 2025, but I want it to be before the end of this year, is doing our first live in-person event and podcast recording with like a Q&A. So we'll make it interactive and get 50, 100 of you guys out here in New York, be able to meet me, be able to meet like a really esteemed guest. And we are going to do a live podcast recording and it's going to be so fucking sick. So that's like one of the things. But to be honest, all of the ideas are centered around like, how do we just build that connection? How do we, and I think a big part of that is meeting people in real life is like, um, doing it in person. We've always been about that. So that's the big thing for me next is how do I be one of your favorites? And how do I just stay committed to what the mission is? Which is to like inspire people to believe that anything is possible, that they can do it, and then give them the tools, the information, the practical steps that they can actually do it. So yeah, we're just taking it further. Like the mission hasn't changed at all. Like if anything, I just feel more motivated to make it happen. Like I'm more, yeah. Like I think one of the things I always say to my team is like we want to be inevitable. Like I don't just, you know, I think sometimes it's like we want to be successful or we want to achieve a certain outcome. But what would it look like if instead of leaving it to chance, you just made it inevitable? Like how would you show up? And that's what I think about. Like I want it to be inevitable. So that's what we're gonna do. Lovely, lovely, love you.
Bye.
Thank you guys. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, peace.